Uh, Welcome everybody to practical prototyping talk. I'm not used to speak in microphone, so sorry if there is something imperfect. Um, we really believe in power of prototyping, and it's really nice to see so many people also interested into the same topic. So it's really great to know that we are not alone in this. Um, you know that software development projects might be quite messy, especially in the beginning, right? There are all sorts of messy things going on. We need to invest lots of time to understand what it is that we need to build. Everyone in team has their own idea of where we should go, and everything is like full of buzz, right? Um, and somewhere in between uh, of compromising among business, creative, and technical teams, there is an end user whose demands for comfortable, delightful, and useful software grows over time, right? So, in respect to prototyping, we have witnessed how it helps to answer many questions early in software development projects without writing a single line of code. And by anticipating many questions that would otherwise appear later in development projects, we make sure that we don't invest any additional time arguing over many questions that should have been answered in the beginning of process, right? My name is Raitis. This is my colleague Gleb. We are working at Citico, where we design web and mobile productivity applications, mostly for large enterprises in banking and finance sector. And today we'll share our experience into prototyping and how it has helped us to make the collaboration between designers and developers smoother. And one small disclaimer, this talk is going to be focused on the visible parts of the software, the tip of the iceberg, if you like, and but whenever we refer to design, to designer, we mean it in a broad sense, because we believe that everyone who participates in software development projects is a designer, and everyone who participates in such projects defines user experience, even if they are not aware of this. So that's a small disclaimer for this. And we will continue by sharing a small story of the beginnings of our talk, why we made a talk on prototyping.
Hello. Hello. So it's very strange to be speakers in such dev conference because we are designers. And last year at UX Riga 2015, we conducted a workshop called 5-Day Design Sprint, originally invented by Google Venture. And we were talking about typical design and development problem when we come up with an idea, something that might be really great for our product. And what we do, we build its simplest version, we launch it, we measure the results, and we understand that our idea doesn't work so good as we thought, and a lot of assumptions were wrong. So, and it's fine because our initial ideas not the best solutions, right? But we build it, and then we should remember then that nothing more permanent than temporary solutions. Nobody likes to rework, redesign, and rethink stuff. So, idea behind Sprint that within 5 days we trying multiple ideas and different approaches through design and prototyping with our real development, something like this. And after workshop, we received a lot of questions regarding prototypes, like how do we make them? How do we make prototypes within 1 day? And now we understand that this is a real important and actual topic. And we believe that this should be a mandatory part of each development cycle, product development cycle. And a little bit more about the 5-day design sprint. That the first day we understand the problem, and developers participate as well, because we should know to understand the problem. Sometimes we should understand technical dependencies as well. And then we rapidly develop as many solutions as possible. And then we choose the best ideas. For instance, there could be 3 approaches different. And then we build something tangible that can be, something that can be shown to the users. And then we test it with the real people and collect feedback. So basically, this is why we'd like to talk about prototypes today. And Raitis will continue more about design and development process.
Yeah. So Gleb was referring to the 4th day of the 5-day design sprint, right, where we build a prototype. And as he already mentioned, we've met many questions around the topic of how can I build a prototype if I don't know coding, or how do I build a prototype in 1 day? Is it really possible? Or how can I make a prototype for mobile devices, right? And now there are tons of prototyping tools in the markets, and sometimes it may seem that every day a new tool appears, right? We are constantly sharing at our work the tools that have been launched recently, right? And there are many more in pipeline. But they are different between themselves, and the choice of right tool really depends on the task at hand, right? For instance, consider building a website. Let's assume that we need to validate the overall flow. We need to find out whether users can find the right interactive elements, the right action buttons. Do they get the expected results when they interact with the interactive elements? Are the stakeholders happy with the overall flow, right? And common click-through mockups are good enough to answer such strategical questions. And for that, we typically use InVision app, which has really incredible collaboration feature. Allows us to get inputs from many different stakeholders. Okay, but now imagine what's happening a bit later in product development process, right? After we have validated the flow, we have sort of understood the overall scope of the work, and everything seems fine and nice, and we are ready to start the open project, right? Typically, the process looks like this. The designer somewhere around Photoshop and Sketch. So basically, in other words, the designer hands in static mockups, static images, static assets to the development team, and hopes that everything will turn out okay, and all the questions in between will be solved automatically by themselves, right? Sadly, but many important, even critical product and design related questions, they appear during or sometimes even after the development process, when it's already too expensive to make any major changes should they be necessary. And they are necessary often when we find out how users really use the product, right? Sometimes when we observe people using what we have designed, we are sort of going like, you are not supposed to use it like that. Oh, it's really useful to watch others using the product that you're making. One example, you'll probably come across situations where you have to clarify the transition details between different states in the application or other software product, which is especially true for mobile products, where we have limited screen sizes and we have to be really creative and inventive about using it fully. It could be something trivial as adding a new item to the list, right? Even for such a tiny interaction like this, we can ask already several questions about the subtleties in between those two states. And often people try to explain such details verbally, and some people are really good at that. They do it even better than professional actors on stage, but it's really hard to explain details like timing, duration, pause, transition, right? Everything that relates to interaction and animation. And to illustrate this point, let's revise a specific case.
Yeah, if we revise for a specific case, a little bit more complex than just button pressing or new items appearing. Let's imagine that we'd like to develop a mini puzzle game for the phone. By the way, this is me. um, Perhaps when it comes to implementation, we will send to developer like 3 images: initial state, an action, like how user interact with the object, and final state. So, but the transition between initial and final state, as Raitis said, has many options, like appearance with fade in, fade out, transition from the bottom to the top, and other lot of questions. So you as a developers can imagine how many questions you will ask designers before you deal with all cases and issues before you make the game work. But we as designers have only one answer, like, listen, who is developing from us? I think you better know capabilities of the phone, isn't? And I believe that this is a short-term win, because long-term, either you will get a shitty application of this puzzle, or designer, developer will make a ton of iterations, and finally we will hate each other, and we will hate this application as well. So that's why we said that prototyping approach should be mandatory part of each development process. And this is also cost-effective approach. And we will talk about this a little bit later.
Mm-hmm. So in respect to questions, you can easily imagine that there could be questions like, what should happen to the piece of puzzle that is being released in wrong spot? Should it return back to the original position, or should it disappear on the spot? And questions like this, right? Even for such a tiny prototype application, we can ask loads of questions.
Don't ask me. Just show me something.
Yeah, that's the best case, to show something how it really should look like.
And then we will adjust.
So in respect to our works, through many years of experience and sometimes even learning in a hard way in collaboration with development teams, we have boiled down our design process to those 3 main pillars, the 3 main principles that we try to take into account whenever we work with product design. And first of all, it's about tools. Tools are important, and we are constantly investing time into selecting the best tools that make our work process better, that make our collaboration with all the stakeholders smoother, right? And then finally, not finally, but secondly, we are constantly trying to get as much information about the context as possible. And it includes questions like where, how, by whom our products will be used, and that affects our design decisions to a large extent. And then finally, we are trying to leave nothing to interpretation. Our design output resembles the final product as much as possible. Our applications, our prototypes, they respond to swipes, scrolls, drags, and sometimes they're filled with real data. And we are trying to make sure this to take off some potential burden of people who will develop this, right? Because they have other questions to be concerned with later, and if we don't properly do our job, then this pays back in long term, right? In nowadays, well, a couple of years ago, it seemed that it's not possible. Such high fidelity design output is not possible without learning to code, without really getting into development kits, right? But with contemporary tools, we in design team, and again, when I mention design, I mean many different people, right? Business analysts, developers, designers, everyone who participates in the beginning of the process. And so with all those contemporary prototyping tools, we in design phase, in early phase, can go even further, right? We can add higher level of interactivity to our design. We can test it early in the process. We can iterate it together with the clients. And when it comes to actual development, many questions already have been anticipated and hopefully solved. Therefore, designers and developers and all the stakeholders are happy because the product that we are building is well thought out, right? There's something that is iterated many times, and there's something that we can find valuable and really cool for the people that we are building the products for. Let's take a look at the next example, which illustrates the level of fidelity that we can achieve with prototyping tools.
If we go back to our puzzle game, and as I said earlier, that our first assumption, maybe I forgot to mention this, but our first assumption was that interface of this game should be landscape mode. So this will be most convenient for the player. And this is a video from usability testing where user interact with the interactive prototype, and basically user don't know that this is prototype. And as you can see, user can control easily this part of application. By control, I mean he can drag and drop puzzle pieces and move around, put, and if it's wrong place, puzzle returning back to the original position. So we also have initial state, in action, and final state. So this is better, I guess, than just the 3 images. And after usability test, by the way, this was made in a few hours. Made, tested, and after this we realized that landscape mode isn't so convenient. It's better to try portrait mode and other findings. So I wouldn't be so happy to know about those issues after 3 months of real development. Maybe not 3, but definitely not 2 hours. Correct me if I'm wrong. And so that's why we said that prototyping is cost-effective approach to get answers on early stages.
Okay, so with everything being said, we're not finishing yet, but to recap a bit, here are 3 main reasons why we think prototyping is powerful. So first of all, it gives much more control over what goes later to implementation, where obviously all the changes require much more resources, right? And in respect to user interfaces, if designers are sort of comfortable with performing many iterations even during an hour, then realize that it's much more difficult at development stage where we all have to be concerned with infrastructure, security, code quality, maintainability, and other technical aspects, right? And the point is that with prototyping, there is a way to perform iterations much faster with all the involved stakeholders. And these iterations help us to anticipate many questions that are relevant for development stage and think about them before it's too late. And we noticed in our work that if we, again, the whole team don't anticipate those questions in the beginning of the software process, then we have 2 options, as Gleb already mentioned in the beginning, right? Either we spend countless of hours arguing over compromises, limitations, and often at the expense of usability and delightfulness of the software products that we are building, or the other option, we in the end get a product that is quite far from what was envisioned and what was planned. And sometimes we realize that we have to start from scratch again, right? And we don't want that. We want to solve all the potential questions in the beginning, and that includes the appearance, the usability, and the most important, the usefulness of the product that we are building. Prototyping is also fun. Playing with a prototype or watching others play with your product is really fun, and it opens access to rich revelations about the product that we are building, right? It gives an array of insights, of inspiration that we can use to build a better product. And besides, dynamic product feels much more convincing, and it's really crucial if we are concerned about convincing stakeholders that the idea we are working on, the product, is workable. A linear flow of tens or sometimes even hundreds, if you're working with enterprise software, of mockups feels like a dead fish, right? It kind of looks like something that we want to build, but we can't test it. We don't know how it works. It just doesn't swim. It just looks, there's no way to test it, right? And customers don't get a complete picture of whether those static screens that we provide, whether they fit for the context they are building the product for, right? And as we already mentioned, it's also important to anticipate many potential questions that would appear otherwise in development process. It's not possible to do with static mockups. You can see, you can sort of maybe make some conclusions about the appearance of the product, or maybe some conclusions about basic usability things, but the real revelations come when we actually play with the product. So, for instance, in respect to customers, here is one quote from one of our clients from European bank. He was really relieved that we, instead of many static mockups, we provided a video recording of a living, breathing prototype that safely guided him and his stakeholders through the overall concept of the product, right? The software product. So knowing how this prototyping, how prototypes have helped us in product development process, we're always now trying to provide prototypes and video recordings of prototypes as part of our design output. So hopefully we have shown some points why prototyping can be helpful. And as we mentioned, it's really easy to build prototypes nowadays, and there's an abundance of tools available on the market right now, and we can pick any tool that's most convenient for us. And it's not for so-called only designers, right? It's for everyone. Business analysts could take a prototyping tool and build something quickly in the beginning and show to customers, right? Customer themselves can build something quickly and validate with all the involved stakeholders, right? And basically, there are 4 types of prototyping tools as we have divided them. The simplest ones that are really good at answering strategical questions are so-called workflow-based tools, where we quickly drag in images, wireframes, design mockups, final designs, link them together, and then show to customers, to users, and see whether they can make sense of the flow. And in that way, we very quickly get feedback, useful feedback we can apply later in design and development process. The second category of tools is so-called timeline tools. You've probably seen on the web many nice-looking animated screens, like maybe some of you know Dribble, which is full of nicely working, nicely animated concepts, and many of such concepts have been made in Adobe with Adobe products. And basically, what's the problem with these tools is that often you can make a video recording of this, but you cannot try it on real users or by yourself. But still, they can be useful, and they are useful to make to show how different kinds of animation should look like. The third tool is quite something new, at least for us, but very interesting. It's so-called visual programming tools, tools that solve all the things with UI, where basically someone without any coding skills can drag in images, link them together in a nice way, and as an output gets a prototype that looks like a final app. Sometimes users don't even know that what we give them is something that mimics the final product, but is not the final product, right? And the fourth category.
Example.
Yeah.
Puzzle interactive.
Yeah. One of the examples was the puzzle game that we showed before, and it was made with one of the tools that we'll tell about in a moment. Absolutely no coding was required there. And so fourth category is so-called code-based tools like Framer or Xcode. Some people prototype in Xcode too. HTML. Many people prototype using just simple HTML, CSS, and maybe JavaScript libraries like jQuery. That's also possible, and there are some advantages too.
By the way, those tools allows you not only for mobile design but for desktop as well.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so the plan in a minute is to go through 4 of the tools that we have found really useful in our work practice, and in many ways they are useful in their own ways. There are advantages and disadvantages for every tool. So let's go quickly through, and we'll start by Origami.
I think this one most familiar will be, and this is one of the first prototyping tools that we have tried, and this is Origami, a Facebook Origami, which is built on Quartz Composer. This is a visual programming application made by Apple, but Origami itself was made by Facebook design team. So, go next.
Yep.
So this is how the interface looks like. Basically, you have predefined patches from the left. You connect them each other, and you're able to build anything, even for instance, in our example, this is a reproduction of Facebook Messenger. One of the feature like new image, new photo capturing, and once you press the send button, the new screenshot appears. You'll see in a moment this. So you can set any types of values of any kind of layers, etc. You can connect the logic behind this, and yeah, as you can see from the right, this is a preview, real-time preview. New image was captured. So we also believe that designers should know how to code a little bit, because when you explore those tools, you start thinking a little bit in terms of like scroll view, delay, conditions, etc. And this also a little bit bridge between designers and developers. So yeah, some kind of switch patches, interactions, transitions, etc. And all values like transitions from the left, Y position, etc. So those are values. Move it to the real code later on.
Yeah, well, one of the wonderful features of Origami is that you can export the prototype to real code, right? Yeah, that's one of the advantages in Origami. I'll jump to the next tool. As I mentioned, from this code-based type of tools, it's Framer. Similarly as with Origami, Framer is also one of the first major tools available in the market, allowing to create high-fidelity prototypes. And it was also the roots of it grows from Facebook, which was meaning that it was founded by 2 Facebook employees who are now residing in the Netherlands. So, what's special about Framer? Unlike other prototyping tools on the market, this requires a bit of coding. It's lightweight coding, it's very focused on animations and interactions, but it's still coding, and if people with development backgrounds feel as in home using this tool, then for some people, like business analysts, designers, this tool might seem a bit intimidating. So the code is based on CoffeeScript. Everyone who is sort of knowledgeable with web technologies, JavaScript, will probably feel very comfortable using Framer. And what makes it distinctive from other prototyping tools, another reason is that you can fill your prototypes with real data, right? If with other tools you sort of mimic the data, you import images, then with Framer you can sort of work with real data, like Twitter feeds, Facebook tweets, or basically any data that's coming from databases. In this case, in this particular case, this is a Twitter feed. It's important in parse. If you know this, this is kind of a really cool way, really cool tool to store data in. Unfortunately, yeah. Yeah, so it's possible by using Framer. And what's also cool about Framer, you can create prototypes that can save data. For instance, if the user closes the product, opens it again, you can save the previous state, and bringing the fidelity of the prototypes even higher, right? And making users feel that they are using a real application. The drawback of Framer is probably that the learning curve is quite steep, but the ceiling is very high. It's much higher than for other tools. You can basically, once you get over the basics, you can build anything you can imagine using Framer. Not only interaction patterns that are available in common products right now, but also something innovative. So in that sense, it's really great for exploring new things, new patterns. Regarding the next tool, it's Pixate. It's also very useful, very effective at creating prototypes that feel like real applications. It was acquired by Google last year, so it's interesting where it brings Pixate to. And basically, prototypes in Pixate, they are being composed only from images. Absolutely no coding is required. In comparison to other tools, other prototyping tools, Pixate has also Windows Studio. So if you are sort of fond of building things on Windows machines, it's possible using Pixate. The drawback of Pixate, as we have noticed in our work, is that once prototypes get bigger, once they get more complex, it's a bit harder to maintain and iterate them using Pixate. So I would say Pixate is more suitable for trying out tiny interaction snippets, tiny animation snippets, quickly making it, testing it, and then deciding what to do with this next. So Pixate is probably, unlike other tools, it's not suitable for making full-fledged prototypes. We have done this. If you don't agree, you can of course share your experience, but at least in my opinion, it's really hard to build full-fledged prototypes with Pixate. And then we come to the final tool we would like to talk about today, and it's Principle.
This is our favorite prototyping tool, Principle. Maybe next slide. So interface is quite simple, and to build from the right, to build such kind of prototype, you can do it with maybe 30 minutes or less. So depends on any behaviors, items could be changed, and this prototyping tool allows you to make anything what you'd like. For instance, even multiple prototype. So yeah.
Yeah, basically why we this principle has become a sort of de facto choice for making prototypes in our work practice, and the reason for this is that it's most cost-effective tool, at least for us, to quickly test ideas, quickly make prototypes, and because it's cost-effective, we don't have any remorse or dislike over throwing out what we have done and starting all from scratch, which is basically the main thing for prototypes. They should be so easy to create that there is no problem throwing it out, because often ideas turn out to be wrong or not the best solution to the given problem, right? So we iterate So in principle helps us to iterate many times until we arrive at the best solution.
As we also shared those prototypes with our customers and all stakeholders. Yeah, you saw the quotes from feedback quotes, and by the way, our managers also asked the name of this tool to start quickly. Maybe make a prototype and validate those ideas as well.
Yeah. Okay, so that's briefly it about making rapid prototypes, at least in our work practice. And if there's one thing to remember from this talk, then it's probably that considering the abundance of available prototyping tools, there's no excuse not to demand a prototype or video record of prototype as part of requirement set or design delivery sets, right? And let's remember that there's nothing more permanent as temporary. So the earlier we get all the decisions right, the better the product becomes. And prototyping is really great at making the right decisions at the beginning of software development process. So thank you very much for listening to us. And yeah. And we will be very happy answering questions.
So you showed us nice animations and prototypes and all this cool stuff you do. How often do you get the problem when you do a prototype, you go to developer, and developer says, "Are you crazy? How I'm gonna do it?" Or he does it different way and it looks different. So how you solve those problems?
That's the problem. We have stumbled on this problem many times, and and prototyping is one of the reasons why we how we solve this problem, right? And if you remember, when we said that when we say design or a designer, we mean it in broad sense. So we consider developers designers also in the beginning of the process, right? And because of that, we try to involve all the people in the beginning of the process. So for instance, when we show animations like these, in the beginning of the process, they usually are lower fidelity, like animated wireframes and like that. We get an early input from stakeholders, from business analysts, from clients, and also from developers. If they say in the beginning, this is not possible, you're crazy, we just don't do that. This is one of the things that we dismiss in the beginning. If developers say it's not possible, we don't go further. And that's one of the good things about prototyping, that we can sort of mimic the final product, throw the idea out without any cost.
It's important to note that those tools are built on not mobile, but considering with the development approach. So you can do crazy stuff there.
About those tools you mentioned, which ones are free to use, which ones are paid, and also on what platforms are they available?
First one, Origami is free. Framer.
Framer is partially free.
Origami free. Macintosh. Origami.
Framer.
Framer.
Regarding Framer, when I started using it, I put it on Windows machine, but it requires some technical tinkering. Since it's web-based, you can get it working free. It's basically a JavaScript library, right? But it provides its convenient development studio only on Macintosh platforms. But you can get Framer working on any platform if you do some technical tinkering.
So, next, Pixate, Windows, and both platforms, and free. And the last one, Principal, 40 days trial version, but then 100 euros. But this is license, so you pay once.
Hi. Just heard you said that it's a great feature that you can export the code after prototyping it. But actually, as developers, do you use this exported code, or you have to still write from scratch the right code?
Maybe you should answer about Origami.
Of course, you should from scratch.
Oh.
How it helps developers. Developer see the initial structure of maybe animation, transition, or anything that finally should looks like.
And yeah.
And then export to code? No. It's sadly, but usually prototypes throwing away.
But the thing about prototypes and reusing the data, right? It's hard to verbally explain like details, like there's transition details, spring animations, and all those numbers, right? It's impossible to sort of explain them verbally. And the good thing, yeah, for instance, the same framer, you have all those numbers for the animations, right? And this can be reused, which is already better than nothing. Yeah.
How often is situation when, for example, you show this prototype and after that client says everything works. Why should I pay for 1,000 more hours? If it was done in 2.
Yeah, it's already a final working up, right?
Before we share our prototype, we clearly explain what it is, and also behind, I mean not behind, but in prototype itself, it doesn't contain real data. I mean, customers usually understand this, but sometimes it's a problem.
Hello. I wanted to ask, do these tools support like mainly devices like iPads, phones, and desktops? Like how you showing your stuff to client? Actually, like giving the iPad with the prototype, or just showing the smooth animation?
Yeah. Do you like to answer? Yeah. Well, we have shown our prototypes, for instance, the same InVision. It's based on web. Basically, it's a web page that's working offline. That sometimes works, even though the animations are not as smooth. Regarding Framer, it has a separate downloadable viewer for both iPhones and Androids. Regarding Principle, Principle works only for iPhone, but since we are mostly working with iOS devices, that's the choice of ours. But using, for instance, the same framer, you can show prototypes on Android devices as well. And I think Pixate also might work on Android, right? Both platforms, yeah.
Answering your question, we also, of course, trying to show it on the real devices, in the real context, because otherwise it's really hard to make decision. Right? We should design in real context, and yeah, our customers is able to try our prototypes on the real devices, like iPhone, iPad.
I have a question about your workflow. How do you build a prototype? Do you receive raw requirements from an analyst and translate it into your prototype, or do you receive intermediate wireframe which you translate into this well, good-looking, animated, and moving prototype?
Yeah, Usually we are using the prototypes and design explorations in the requirements gathering phase, and we try to use all those assets to help clients to define requirements as well. And that's why we test those prototypes, show results to clients, and try to convince about certain things, because we believe that when we see that something might be improved, it's our duty to help clients to define the requirements that help to make a better product. And so basically we use it as early as possible, even in requirements gathering phase. That's usually our workflow since the beginning.
So it's first versions of the prototype usually are not done after requirements. It's your improvisation on the requirements that will be gathered probably in near future.
Well, it's a good mix, right? We still have some expectations from clients, some initial requirements, but we are working together to shape them in a way that helps to build a product that works. And so it's not like we fully improvise, but we are trying every possible thing to make sure that those requirements, they characterize a product that might work on real users.
Hello. Have you had any experience with agile development methodologies?
Yes.
How does that work? I mean, you have said that you try to get the prototypes ready during the requirements phase, but that's waterfall stuff, isn't it?
Is it really? I can't put it in a specific box. Formally we are working with agile methodologies, and everyone is sort of comfortable with iterations, with throwing out ideas, right? But the thing is that even in agile, people feel, especially during development phase, uncomfortable if they have to rework really the major parts that haven't been thought over in the beginning before the development starts, right? So maybe it's a hybrid approach, I don't know, but the problem that this prototyping and iterations before development phase, how this help us? It helps us to get off many basic interaction questions, or questions that relate to usefulness of the application before the development has been started. Because even in agile, if you iterate for the whole process, right, even in such case, it might be really expensive to throw out features, even by using such methodology. So it's some kind of mix, I don't know.
But if initially you use the special tools for making the prototype, then later on, when the client's requirements change, for example, isn't it easier to use the existing code base to develop like real existing working thing and call that the prototype?
Like reuse the thing, right?
Yes, use the code that you already have. Yeah, that was my question. That if you already have written some code based on that prototype, isn't it easier to use that code and already existing functionality to develop it a bit further to use that as a prototype?
Yeah, sometimes it's possible too, but with prototypes we can iterate much faster, right, than by rewriting the code. For instance, if in 2 hours we can build something that looks like a real product and test it on users, go out in the world, then with real code it's not always possible. Although we are not believers of sort of one silver bullet, right? It's all those questions, all those things are being solved as per project basis. And sometimes we work with developers that are really wonderful at making iterations in respect to user interfaces, right? And sometimes not. Sometimes we are working with people who hate user interface and they're not willing to invest any time in user interface. And if we ask them to change one simple icon, they are really mad at us. So it really depends on the people we are working with, right? Okay, thank you very much.